Dolly Simonovich. Welcome to Senior Moments. Today's guest is Neil O'Farrell. He's an expert in identity theft. Welcome to our show.
Hi, Dolly. Thanks for inviting me.
Oh, pleasure to have you here. We all need to know about this ever-growing problem, isn't it?
It is. It's the number one crime in America now.
Is it really?
It's been the number one consumer complaint to the Federal Trade Commission every year for 15 years.
Well, is it a worldwide problem?
It's a global crime, but it's probably hit America more than any other country simply because of the way America is built. The Social Security number, for example, it's become a secret key, a unique identifier. So once thieves get that, they have, it's like the keys to the kingdom. So America seems to be suffering from this crime more than any other country on the planet.
Do other countries not have Social Security numbers?
Most other countries don't have the equivalent or don't use it as a financial identifier. And that's the key. It's kind of as though the financial industry a couple of decades ago hijacked the Social Security number and said, as long as you have that, you are who you say you are, or we believe you are who you say you are, and we will grant you endless instant credit. And that's the attraction for thieves.
What is your background in this?
So I started back in the late 70s, early 80s in cybercrime. Back there it was called computer security. I remember telling my mother that I went to marketing college, and I remember telling her I was so excited, I'm going into computer security, Mom. And she said, that's great, son number 9. What's a computer? I mean, there was no internet, there was no email, but I had this sense that computers would be big, and for some reason that protecting them would be big, and lo and behold, I was right, but 35 years too early.
What kinds of things do you work on?
I work on everything from community education to victim support. I train law enforcement. I interview identity thieves, some of them in prison, to get a better idea of what makes them tick and what we as consumers can learn from them. I advise governments. I advise big corporations. I sit on a number of task forces. So really my goal and my primary role is on the people security. Mm-hmm. It's getting consumers and employees to kick in the biggest defense that they have, which is the one lodge right between their ears, their own vigilance, their own awareness, and do what little they can to protect themselves.
Now, you've started an organization, haven't you?
Yeah, a couple of years ago, working with some local law enforcement, we started a thing called the Identity Theft Council in 2010. And the whole idea was victims of identity theft typically have no one to turn to. It's the single biggest crime in America. It claims more than a million new victims every 30 days. So that's 1 every 2 seconds. And most of them, the first thing they do is go to local police or sheriff's department. But police are so overwhelmed, they've really no good news for them. So some local law enforcement asked me if I would counsel victims free of charge, help them get through it. Mm-hmm. And so one city in Hayward, California, led to another, and we're now up to about 100 cities and working across the country in providing kind of a safety net for victims, a hand to hold, training law enforcement so they know better how to react to victims and support them, and really ultimately trying to focus on prevention through education.
Mm-hmm. How do we recognize that we may be a victim?
That's a very good question, actually. What's the definition of identity theft? Because strictly speaking, a lot of the stuff that we hear about or that we go through is not exactly identity theft. For example, if someone gets your credit card number and they run up some charges, that's technically considered credit card fraud. It's not that someone has taken your personal information, has made a clone of you, and is out there in the world running up debts in your name. But to make it easy to understand and to make it easier to communicate to consumers, they're all lumped into identity theft. It can take all kinds of shapes, which is why it's such a big crime. It can be someone getting your personal information and opening up new accounts in your name. So they could take out a new credit card, or maybe a Macy's or a Best Buy card, or maybe they want to pay for the utilities, their PG&E using your name, or they simply want to steal money. They want to get into your bank account. They could steal your existing credit cards and start running up charges. They could steal your checks and start writing checks in your name, right through to filing taxes using your identity, applying for social security benefits, applying for a job using your name, although to be honest, most thieves don't work. They already have a job in which is stealing your identity. Mm-hmm. To hiding using your identity. For example, if they're pulled over by the police, they give your social security number, and suddenly now you have a criminal record in your name. So it's an enormous number of crimes, some simple, some complex, which is why it's so challenging.
Can they make up social security numbers?
They can, but it's not much use. They can't make up fake social security numbers, but they can make up social security numbers that turn out to be right. But they don't have to make them up. You might have heard of the Anthem data breach.
Oh, yes.
That one data breach exposed the social security numbers, dates of birth, names, addresses, income of a third of all adults in America.
All of them are in danger now.
They're all in danger. And 2 weeks after that, another 11 million social security numbers. So we're getting to a point that the social security number of everyone in America will be in the hands of criminals. So criminals don't have to make this stuff up. They simply buy this stolen information off other criminals and go to work on it. The only good news is there's now so much stolen information, it might take the crooks a while to get you. So be patient.
They've got 11 million others to go.
Exactly. The thieves are working their way to getting to you, and they will get round to you eventually.
Do they use social security numbers of people who have passed away?
They most certainly do. The death register contains the information of all individuals who have passed away. You can search it yourself, you can download from it, and there are apparently millions of dead people out there with still living in other people's bodies, and generally identity thieves who are running up vast amounts of credit in the names of the deceased.
Do they use the deceased name also?
Yes, and no one's checking for it. The family's certainly not checking for it.
No.
The individual is deceased.
So
They
really
think
they're really safe. Nobody's looking for them.
Exactly. There's no one's going to expect a credit card bill in that individual's name. They can concoct an address, a new address, and the family of that deceased will probably never know.
Well, are they liable for the charges?
They're not, but it's still painful to go through. Mm-hmm. If you've been through that process of burying and grieving, mm-hmm. and 6, 12, 18 months later, you're now being told that person from the grave owes money. And mm-hmm. while you're not liable for it, it can still be a lot of work to untangle it and to clear their name.
How long can they use somebody's name?
Forever. I mean, a name is something that's pretty hard to change, like a social security number.
But aren't they caught? I mean, they have to start paying the bills at some time.
No one's really chasing them, and this is the whole one of the reasons identity theft is such an attractive crime for crooks. If you think about it, it's very easy to do. Mm-hmm. You can do it from the safety of an armchair. Instead of being armed with a crowbar or a gun, you're armed with a cup of coffee.
Yes.
You can do it from the other side of the world.
Uh-huh.
You can hide and mask your computer's IP address and things like that, so no one can track you. You can make an awful lot of money out of it. We know thieves who have made millions out of this. We know thieves who have, earned $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a month working a few hours at home. And law enforcement are not investigating or chasing these criminals. So if you're making so much money and it's so easy and no one's chasing you, what are you going to do? You're going to do it again and get better. The financial industry tends to simply write off the debts. They rarely investigate because there's no point, and there's going to be no restitution, and an investigation simply adds to the cost. So they wipe it off as the cost of doing business.
You said that you've interviewed some that have been caught. How do you catch them?
Well, quite often they make mistakes. We dealt with what we believe at the time and still do is America's most dangerous identity thief. He's been doing it for 30 years. He's a former hacker who worked for the NSA. He worked for Cisco Systems, so he's highly technical, but he's also a brilliant mind. He's a sociopath, very meticulous. He made a mistake. He was caught in wine country in Sonoma. He was caught by a wine cop on a Friday afternoon on the very last day of his job as a patrol officer. The following Monday, he was going to become a detective. He'd never come across identity theft before, and yet he stumbled across in a parking lot a guy who was acting suspiciously in a car, and the guy tried to talk his way out of it. He's very slick, he'd been arrested or caught many times before, but never arrested because he was able to talk and prove his way out of it. But this cop had a cop's instinct, and he kept digging, and in the end, this individual who hadn't been arrested once in 20 years ended up with 77 felonies. His name is Ray, and he was such an interesting and captivating character. I can't say I admire him because he's a criminal who, harmed a lot of people. But he was so interesting, we made a documentary about him. It's called In the Company of Thieves. You can find it on our website, identitytheftcouncil.org. And it sits down with him and other thieves in jail in Sonoma County, where he's serving a lengthy sentence, which, by the way, is relatively rare for identity thieves. I don't know if it was guilt or pride, wanted to share what he had learned over 30 years as an identity thief and how he is able to manipulate. And this is the key to identity theft. It's about manipulating the system. It's about manipulating security. It's about manipulating people into making them do things that are not in their interest and don't benefit them, but create opportunities for identity thieves.
Well, it's relatively easy to scam somebody who's honest, isn't it? 'Cause they trust other people.
And that's what crooks play on. The really good identity thieves are great social engineers. So they can spot an individual and almost instantly size them up. The most obvious is a senior. Seniors and the elderly, they're a different generation. They come from different time and place. They come from a time where they've been taught that it's polite to trust. Trust unless you have a reason to think otherwise. Identity thieves spot those individuals and they prey on them. And they create what are called trust points. So they imagine, well, what would that individual want to hear from me that would make them trust me? So, for example, they pretend they're from the government, or they pretend they're from the IRS or the Social Security Administration. So they use that position of authority, for example, to gain the trust, because the individuals don't want to, ignore a call from the IRS or from the Social Security Administration. So they tend to be victimized a little bit more, and quite often too, because the thieves know that they either don't have anyone to turn to, or they're too proud to admit that they've been a victim. They don't want to admit that they fell for something that in hindsight was obvious. So we always urge them, come to us first and most, because we can reassure you that your instincts are right if you're suspecting people. And if you get that email or that phone call, we can let you know pretty quickly if you have an issue that you have to address, or if, as in most cases, it's just a scam.
I got a call one time from Windows.
Okay.
It says, your computer's not working properly.
Right. It's a very common scam.
And I fell for it.
Oh,
Can you believe it?
They are very, very good. First of all, the first trust point is that most people recognize the name Microsoft. Okay.
They didn't say Microsoft. They just said Windows.
Okay, and people think that associate
That's
Windows with
Microsoft.
Microsoft.
Yes.
Most of them will actually use the name. And the goal of that scam is either to get into your computer and steal information that's on it, like get into your bank account, or get you to hand over your credit card number, because they're going to fix a fake fault, something that doesn't actually exist on your computer. Right. A lot of people fall for that because it's a clever scam, and they can be very persistent.
So they can get into my computer, get my passwords, or change my passwords.
Absolutely. They can get complete control of your computer. They can plant a computer virus on it. They can monitor what you type. They can get your email password as you type it. The ultimate goal in many cases is to get access to a bank account so they can move money out of it. But in many of the scams, all they're looking for is your credit card number, so they will claim to fix a problem that you don't have. And there's always a threat underneath. If you don't do what we're asking, something bad is going to happen to your computer.
Right. Learn to be nasty. Say no.
Great idea.
Just say no.
Great idea.
No thanks. People say, well, I want to know what he says. I thought, not me, because it's so easy to be talked into something that as soon as they tell me what it is they're talking about, boom, no thanks. That's it.
It's amazing what a great weapon rudeness has become. Society has changed. People used to be more trusting. They shouldn't now. People used to be more polite. Be rude. In certain circumstances, it could save you a lot of grief and money. Yes. Hang up that phone. The IRS will never call you. They'll never email
Microsoft.
you. Or Microsoft. Microsoft, they might love you as a customer, but they don't really know you exist.
No.
You disappear into the woods with so many of their other customers. But you have to be rude. You get an email demanding or threatening you owe money you took out a payday loan. You feel free to delete it. If it's genuine, they'll write to you. They'll go through a legal process. If it's someone claiming to be from PG&E saying you haven't paid your bill, they're going to cut you off, ignore them. Call PG&E back on the number that's on your statement and ask them if they called you.
Sean Greathouse, detective with the San Bruno Police Department. So there are a couple of prevalent phone scams that are going on currently. The first one would be the one that's too good to be true. And I use that because that's an adage I think we can all understand and appreciate. So if you get the phone call that says that you have just won a trip for you and 4 of your friends, or for you and someone else, and all they need is, a check for $150 and your social security number, that's probably too good to be true. And that's one of these, certainly, we hoped your common sense would kick in and that you would realize that that's probably not how that's going to happen. So be very vigilant about receiving that type of phone call. Never should you ever give anyone your social security number over the phone. Never should you blindly send money or a credit card or something like that to a company who is basically soliciting you, saying that you won something. Those are telltale signs of something bad that's likely not, a good thing. The other phone scam that we're seeing today would be the one where it is suspicious. There's something that's just not right. Please allow your conscience to be your guide there. So if you receive the phone call at 10, 11 o'clock at night or whatever time in the morning saying that your grandson or your son or a friend or someone that you know has, let's say, been incarcerated somewhere and they need money for bail, or they're broken down on the side of the road somewhere and they need some cash and could you please help them? If you're receiving this call from a third party, there's probably something wrong there. That's not generally the way something like that's going to go. Now, not to say that it couldn't be true, but please verify. Trust, but verify. Make sure that you reach out to someone who knows where that family member might be and determine, hey, are they really in Mexico, and is there a chance that they're stuck at the border? If they're not in Mexico, then you know that that's not true. These phishing scams where people are just trying to take money from you, which is their ultimate goal, there's a million ways. Just imagine anything that would be important to you, and they know that they're trying to prey on your emotion and prey on the fact that you'll react more quickly without thinking because, oh my gosh, someone's in trouble and they need my assistance. When you get those types of phone calls, again, verify the information before you ever give anyone any information or any money.
When I was 6, my days were spent playing basketball. When I was 6, my dream was to make it to the NBA. When I was 6, my mom had a stroke.
I'm Paul George, and I want you to spot a stroke fast.
F, face drooping. A, arm weakness. S, speech difficulty. T, time to call 911.
Protect the ones you love.
Spot a stroke fast.
It's a short ride from your neighborhood to your naturehood. Find fun activities to do, like boating and biking, or camping and hiking, plus much more. To find a neighborhood park or green space near you, visit discovertheforest.org.
They said a bottle was just a bottle. That no one would ever notice me. But I knew I could be more. That one day, I would make people smile.
one thing that we always advise as your best defense is to slow down. Because when you get one of these calls, when you get one of these threats, you can panic and you really want to be as helpful as possible or get past it as quickly as possible. We just say, take a deep breath, slow down. Who did you say you are? Where are you calling from? That's okay, I'll call you back on the number that I have for you. And if they're genuine, they'll be okay with that. The telltale sign that they're not genuine is that they get a bit panicked or they start to threaten. Oh no, you can't call us back, you have to deal with it now, we're going to cut off your electricity now, just hang up. Be rude, it could be your best defense.
How do you know if they've got you? How do you know something's happening?
Usually you know that you've been a victim when you get bad or disturbing or suspicious news. Typically for an identity theft victim, it's either someone comes looking for money or someone denies them something. So it could be, for example, you get a call from a debt collector saying, you haven't paid your Capital One credit card bill, you owe us money, and you don't have a Capital One card, so you don't know what they're talking about. Or you try to file for your taxes, and the IRS says, no, someone already did. Or the Social Security Administration calls and said, we're cutting off your benefits because you have $50,000 in unclaimed income or undisclosed income, and it turns out that the thief has been working to use your information. So usually you find out long after the crime has occurred, and then you've got to try and figure out, well, what do I do? How do I prove it's not me? How do I get this off my credit? How do I fix my Social Security benefits? And that's when it gets frightening for consumers.
How do you know if it's not another scam calling?
That's a good point. If it's from the IRS or the Social Security Administration, they won't call.
They'll write to you.
They'll write to you. In the case of tax fraud, you'll simply get a letter from them. If you're applying by mail, if you're filing your taxes by mail, saying, sorry, you've already done it. Or if you file online, it'll be rejected automatically. The same with the Social Security Administration. They will write to you. They will put it in writing saying, either you owe this or you're being denied this. So at least you have it in writing. You've got that. You're not under pressure too, because you don't have to give them an answer instantly. And then you can start the process of untangling this web.
I've gotten letters. I know that you're an expert in the internet, but I've gotten letters that look official.
Right.
And when you start reading, and it says not a member of the U.S. government, I think, oh, now just a minute, why are they writing me? So it's important that you read the fine print on everything that you get too.
I received something just the other day from a cruise company saying that I had just won a free cruise for myself and one person for 3 days, and the hope was if I accepted the cruise and I liked it, I would buy another cruise. It turns out it was I did some research on it. It was a scam. They were looking for some money for a deposit, but I couldn't tell it from the real thing. I'd received a lot of solicitations from these cruise lines. It was so convincing. It was so expertly done. It had all the logos. It had all the legal disclaimers. Even with 35 years of doing this, I could not tell whether this was real or fake, and only by searching for it was I able to determine that it was fake. That's how good they are.
So if it's too good to be true,
if it doesn't pass the smell test, it's probably because there's a nasty stench of it.
Boy, that's scary.
It is. That's part of the problem with dealing with this crime. It's very, very scary. There's a sense of helplessness that if they're so sophisticated, what can I do to protect myself?
Computer theft can affect people who don't have computers.
Absolutely.
I know that there's an audience sitting out there, well, I don't have to worry because I don't have a computer. But they're computerized anyhow, whether they have one or not. Is that correct?
If you have a phone, if you have a smartphone, that's a computer. It just happens to have a phone attached as an extra, but it's essentially a computer. And there are scams targeted at your phone. There's malware and computer viruses that are targeted at your phone. So even having a phone makes you vulnerable. But you don't have to own a computer or use the internet to be vulnerable, because the thieves are stealing information from other computers. And the computers of companies that you might have a relationship with, like a utility company or a credit card company. And then they're using that information to steal your identity.
So don't sit back and think you're safe, because they can get you.
As long as you have ever existed on this planet, you are vulnerable, dead or alive. You don't need to have access to the internet. You don't need to use a computer. As long as you have existed on this planet, there will be information about you, and they will, at some point, get their hands on that information. Your job is to reduce the likelihood that they will use it against you, or detect it early enough so that you reduce the damage.
So your advice is to just be vigilant.
That's the best advice I can give. It's the best word you can remember. The most powerful technologies lodge right between your ears. Your own vigilance. It's this idea of slowing down, thinking security first. If it doesn't sound right, if it sounds too good to be true, either slow down and double check it, or 9 times out of 10 you're going to be right, you just ignore it.
Let's take a break here.
Sure.
We'll be right back.
I think the most common way that most people, the average citizen, loses their identity or a portion of an identifier that they would have is through day-to-day interaction with people. Using your credit card at a store or at a restaurant at some point, and your credit card leaves your view, it leaves your hands, there's a potential that the person who is receiving that card may have some nefarious or other things that they may be doing with those cards, using a skimmer, which is a tool that allows a person to basically swipe your credit card, and it immediately obtains the information that's encoded or embedded in the strip of the card, and then they sell that information to would-be thieves, who then share that information with folks who do that. Some other things that you should consider that would be ways that your identity could be stolen is information that you basically throw away, that you leave subject to anyone out there who is looking for an opportunity. So we would encourage you to shred items. If you get the pre-approved credit card, if you have information that has your social security number and date of birth, those are items that shouldn't be going into your garbage. Those items need to be shredded or destroyed in some way so that those items cannot be used at some point to create an identity using part of your information. A lot of what we're seeing today is I may have your name and someone else's date of birth, and then I create that identity using that information. And then the reason that I do that is I might have a forged credit card or a forged identification that I can use to do those types of things. But those are some of the ways that your identities are stolen.
Of all the things you've done with your bike, donating it to Goodwill may be the most incredible of all. Your donations help fund job placement and training for people in your community, which means your stuff can be more powerful than you think. Goodwill. Donate stuff, create jobs.
Hey, did you know 2.4 million loving cats and dogs in shelters and rescues need our help to find a home? Let's go to the shelterpetproject.org and meet a few who are in a shelter near you. Harlow. Oh, she's one great listener who loves to hear all your stories. My kind of cat. Cerulo is a sweet, goofy boy who's eager to please. Sounds just like another dog I know. So go to the shelterpetproject.org, search your local shelters and rescues, and go for a cuddle with your next best friend. Adopt.
We're watching for West Nile virus. Are you? Dead birds are often the first sign that West Nile virus is in your neighborhood. If you find a dead bird, call the California West Nile virus hotline or report it online at westnile.ca.gov. For more information about West Nile virus in San Mateo County, go to smcmvcd.org or call the San Mateo County Mosquito and Vector Control District, protecting public health since 1916.
Okay, Simon, what do people wear?
Clothes.
That's right. So it's important to learn how to dress yourself. Here's how it's done. Shirt, underwear, pants, socks, shoes. Underwear, always first, name tag on the back. Then pants and shirt. Go ahead and put this on. Now with the shirt, you want to make sure the first button's right or you have to start all over again, okay? Socks left on left, right on right. Tying the shoes, we're going to take the laces, we're going to cross them over, we're going to turn around where the bunny goes down in the hole, pull it tight, and bunny ears. Got it?
Most parenting is hard to do in just 2 minutes. But 2 minutes twice a day making sure they brush is easier, and it could help save them from a lifetime of tooth pain.
You know the old saying, the grass is always greener on the other side. Well, it may look that way, but
when you get up close, it's all weeds and stickers. Those big company TV providers may have great introductory offers, but read the fine print. You have to sign a long-term contract? Do they offer free service calls? And just how high do their rates go after the limited time offer expires? At San Bruno Cable, you sign no long-term contract. Our rates are easy to understand without surprises, and if you experience a problem, we offer free service calls on the next business day. Thank you for choosing San Bruno Cable.
So a pre-approved credit card would be something that if someone was out stealing mail, that they could take that item from your mailbox, or they could take it from your garbage if you have failed to shred it, and then they can use that information, because oftentimes in that, the company that's soliciting or offering the credit card, they've already included some information in there that would be more than what you would just be your name and your address. And so they could take that application and return it saying, yes, I would like a credit card. And then most folks who are adept at doing these types of crimes kind of have an idea of when they can expect that credit card to arrive in the mail, and they'll be checking your mailbox in future dates to see if the credit card arrives. And if so, then they'll take that credit card and begin to use it immediately. And what most of these people are doing is they'll use the credit card until it is immediately, or until the time that it reaches that it's no longer available, or it becomes refused, or they can't use it, and then they immediately get rid of it, and they're on to the next credit card that they have, or next item that they have.
Hi, welcome back. We're here with Neil O'Farrell, an expert on identity theft. Neil, what can we do to keep ourselves safe?
I think there are so many things that you can do. It's really a matter of focusing on the stuff that's the easiest to do, the most important to do, and the stuff that you really need to be doing today. So if you look at just your computer, for example, a lot of your protection is really about better habits and behaviors. It's about not doing stuff. So the number one threat on your computer is computer viruses. Now, they are far more sophisticated than they were when I first started. In fact, they barely existed back then. There are more than 200 million different types of computer viruses out there, and they're getting more sophisticated every day. They want into your life through your computer. So how do you stop them? Rule number one, stop clicking on stuff. The only way that these viruses, this malware can get onto your computer, they usually come through email, and they require you to click on a link or try and open an attachment, and as soon as you do, that launches the malware into your computer, and then they can wreak havoc. They can get into your bank account, they can steal your passwords. If you don't click, they lose. It's the easiest way to fight back.
Well, what do you do if it comes from your relative? You get an email and it says your relative's full name, and
tell them to stop sending the stuff. I mean, really, it's really a judgment call for you. Do you want to click on that wedding video, suspecting that it's the real thing, but at the back of your mind worry that it's actually a scam? You don't know what kind of computer hygiene they have. Maybe their computer was infected with malware, and then everything they send out hides malware. That's typically how it works. So even if you know the person, even if it's a company you deal with, and they say, click here for this, click there for that, don't click. If it's something they want you to do, if they want you to check on an account, if they want you to check on a statement, go directly to the website and log in that way, or find out that way. If it's a family member saying, check out these funny photos or funny videos, call them and say, well, you know, where else can I see it? Maybe it's on their Facebook page. Email is just too dangerous to be click happy with. You really have to be click cautious.
How safe is online banking?
Online banking, I think, is probably safer than traditional banking, as long as you know what you're doing and take time to figure it out. The benefits of online banking are you're really reducing the amount of mail that thieves can steal. For example, if you opt for to go paperless, so that you're just being notified by email or text message that a statement is available, it takes your personal information out of the mail. So that's a huge boon for you, and it really slows down the identity thieves. But there are so many things that the bank can do with an online account to protect you. For example, with my bank, I have so many alerts. If anything at all happens in my account, I'm alerted, if it was me or a thief, so that I can then tell the bank, yes, it's okay, or no, it's not. I have this little trick that I do. I go to an ATM, I take out some cash, and I slowly put my cash in my wallet. And I try to see, will I get my cash in my wallet before my phone beeps to tell me that I'm taking out money from the ATM? The bank can tell immediately that someone is at this ATM in this supermarket taking out this amount of money. Was it me? And I can immediately pick out my phone and hit a big red button that says no, close my account or freeze my account or whatever the actions are. So it's a great safety net. It's got someone watching over you. A lot of banks and credit unions too, we can't leave them out, will also allow you to pay all your bills from one account. So you don't have to remember to pay bills and put them in the mail and maybe they'll get lost or stolen. You can have your bank or credit union pay those directly out of your account, which again reduces your vulnerability to identity theft and pushes onto the financial institution the responsibility for making sure that those bills were paid. And if it got lost in the mail, that's on the financial institution and not on you. So if you're comfortable using the computer and using the internet, I would highly recommend it. The only caveat is make sure that you keep your computer clean from computer viruses, because they will know you're banking online and they will either try to intercept those messages or try and steal your password and get in. So it comes with a trade-off. It really does force you to make sure that you're practicing computer hygiene.
How about writing checks?
I would avoid it simply because, first of all, you have to get those checks, which means checks are coming to you in the mail, which makes them vulnerable to being stolen. I'm a big fan of using credit cards, and especially over ATM or debit cards. Never ever use your debit or ATM card to pay bills. If you're using a credit card, they're stealing the credit card company's money. They're stealing the bank's money. I'm okay with that. If they steal your debit card and get your PIN number, for example, you go into a store, you swipe your credit card or your debit card or your ATM card and you enter in your PIN. Hackers can steal all of those. They can make a clone of your card and they can empty your bank account. When they're emptying your bank account, they're stealing your money. Mm-hmm. Now, you may get it back, you may not get it back, or you may get it back in a couple of months, but in the meantime, you have to pay your bills. So I would minimize the use of a check. I would never use my debit card to pay for anything, especially online. I use your credit card and pay it off at the end of the month. I do it. I have purchase protection. If I don't like something and the store won't take it back, my credit card will refund me completely. I get lots of alerts. I earn points. I can get a free weekend away. And it's just shutting off one more path for crooks to get access to my bank account.
For my new computer, it turns green up on top. Do you have any idea what that is?
There are programs that you can download. Quite often they're bundled in with your antivirus software. And the goal of these, they're like site advisors. The goal is, before you click on a website, they try to determine if the website is safe. So they're looking for obvious signs of malware, of computer virus, hiding on that website, so when you click, you get infected. I highly recommend them. They're not intrusive. They don't slow down your surfing noticeably. They provide tremendous benefit, and in most cases, they're free. So check with your antivirus software. Most good antivirus programs have this. And the reason they do it is because as hackers realize that people are becoming more wary of emails hiding viruses, they're now moving to infecting websites so that visitors to those websites get infected when they visit the website or click on something. Stay away from websites that you don't know. So don't be so surf happy. Stay in safe neighborhoods. In stores, the websites of stores that you're familiar with, big brand names.
So what other things can we do to keep ourselves safe?
The dreaded password. Okay, I mean, passwords are like people. You may not like them, you may not get along with them, but you can't live without them. So most of us, whether we admit it or not, cheat with our passwords. We either make them so easy for us to remember, they're very easy for others to guess. Mm-hmm. We've seen year after year, study after study, the number one most common used password today is either password or password 123 or password ABC. That's worse than having no password. Hackers will figure it out in an instant. They've got programs that run through millions of different passwords at a time. You really have to start making your password very complex. For example, I know security experts who use password as a password, but what they do, for example, the O in password, they change it to a 0. The 2 S's, they change to dollar signs, right? The W in Word, they make a capital out of that. Maybe they put a couple of spaces in the middle, or they put an exclamation mark at the end. That makes it infinitely more difficult for hackers to crack, because every character, every uppercase, every number that you add to it adds thousands of years, in some cases, of computing effort for the hackers to figure out that password. So get to grips with your passwords, make them long, make them complex, use a thing like a free password manager that will create and store all these passwords for you so you don't have to remember them, and do not reuse the same simple password on multiple sites, because they get one, they get them all.
What are passphrases?
Great question. A passphrase is like a new and more advanced version of a password. So a passphrase is a phrase that only you would know about your life, that will be almost impossible for hackers to guess, and from which you create a password. So for example, I graduated from San Bruno High in July 2nd, let's be kind, 1980, okay? So if you take the first letter of every word and all the numbers, think of what you get. I, there's a capital I, so immediately that's an advantage to you, an advantage to hackers, because it's adding a capital. Graduated from, small g, small f. San Bruno High, capital S, capital B, capital H. So you see where I'm going? And then you add in the numbers, July, you've got a capital J in July, but you've got the second 02. That means you've got a password that is 8, 10, 12 characters long, has got uppercase, lowercase, and numbers, is easy for you to remember, but impossible for hackers to guess. You can even write it down and keep it near your computer, because if someone breaks into your house, they're very unlikely to look at that and say, oh, that's a password. It's a very, very easy way to achieve what you really want with passwords. Is very, very hard to guess, but without having to strain your memory.
What a good idea.
And that's the thing about security. Most of the security are simple ideas if you just thought of them. It's just doing very, very simple things, you know, like we talked about before, slowing down, not clicking on stuff, just changing your behavior. You don't have to be a rocket scientist, you don't have to be an expert. If you slow down, it really is your best defense. And the same goes with passwords. Slow down and think of different ways to get to the same place.
Is there anything else we can do to help ourselves?
There are lots of records out there that can tell you if you're a victim. The two most obvious are your bank and credit card statements and your credit reports. You need to be checking your bank and credit card statements every single month, because if thieves have access to your accounts, what they will do is quite often they will run very small payments through your accounts just to see if you're watching. And if you're not watching and there are no alarms going off and there are no alerts, then they'll hit you for a big number. So make sure you get those statements. Get those statements from your mail as soon as they arrive, because you don't want thieves getting those statements, because then they know a little bit more about you. If you can, and if you're comfortable, switch to online banking or getting your statements by email. Again, it takes one link out of the criminal underworld because they're not able to steal your mail. The statements aren't coming in your mail. On the credit reporting side, that's often the first sign that either someone has your information and they are testing it, or they are actually successfully opening accounts in your name.
What does that do to your credit score?
Yeah, it does an awful lot of harm. If thieves are taking out a lot of credit in your name, as credit gets bigger, scores get lower. As credit becomes debt and you're not paying it, your score gets even lower. So you really have to make sure that you are watching your credit. You can monitor it free, each credit report once a year. There's a site called annualcreditreport.com. You're entitled by law to it once a year.
And you don't have to pay for it.
You don't have to pay for it. If they ask you for a credit card, if they ask you to pay for it, you're on a scam site. Don't go to any site that looks like it or sounds like it. It's annualcreditreport.com. And there are lots of other websites out there that allow you to monitor your credit reports free of charge. creditkarma.com, creditsesame.com. They will allow you free access to your credit reports, no credit card required, and they will alert you if there are signs that someone's applying for credit in your name, and that allows you to kick in your defenses, go to the bureau, say, that's not me, get it off my report, maybe file a police report. So when it comes to documentation, checking your credit and bank statements very carefully every single month and challenging anything that you see, and watching your credit reports at least once a year, but around the clock if you can, because if you're only doing it once a year, it gives the thieves 12 months to do harm that's going to just create such a mess for you to clean up.
What is included in your credit report?
Your credit report essentially contains all your credit history and then some.
So it lists all of your credit cards, it lists
every piece of credit that you've had. It lists all the inquiries for credit. So you applied for a credit card, but you didn't go through with it. The inquiry is still going to be there. It will list any mortgages that you've had or applied for. It will list all the addresses that you've lived at. So it's a wealth of information about you. The credit bureaus are very good at stopping thieves from getting their hands on that information, but the thieves don't need to do that. They'll get that information from other sources and then use it to get credit in your name. Quite often the bureaus are not watching out for it. They don't know if it was you or someone else applied for that credit card.
Yes.
It's up to you to watch that, and as soon as you do, you kick in your response mode, you call the bureau and say, that's not me, here's why, here's my police report, get it out of my credit report and don't let it hurt my score.
Knowing your score isn't good enough.
The score is simply a measure of your credit worthiness. And until the credit turns bad, it's unlikely to affect your score, or until the credit has got very high, it's not likely to affect your score. What thieves will often do, and this thief that we interviewed in jail in Sonoma has told us, if he gets victims with a good identity and a very high net worth and very high credit score, and you can have a very high credit score and not be wealthy, you've simply been good with your credit all your life, he will take out credit in their name and he'll pay it off. So there are no red flags. He'll pay it off and he'll get more credit and more credit. So the credit card companies and the banks are not watching this individual because there are no signs. And then he'll wait until the accounts get into $20,000, $30,000, $40,000. Then he'll cash everything out and disappear. And then the house of cards comes crashing down. The first you know about it as a victim is when they come calling, wondering why you haven't paid your debts.
Oh dear.
Not a good situation to be in, and very frightening for consumers. The only good news is, as a consumer, you are absolutely not liable for these debts, and you absolutely do not have to prove that they're not yours. This is the panic that victims feel that, well, it's just my word against the banks. It's not your word. You simply have to assert that it's not you, and that's usually accepted with a police report. It's then up to the debt collector or the bank or the credit card company to prove it wasn't you. 9 times out of 10 they won't waste a dime on it, because they know they deal with identity theft all the time. They'll absolve you of the debt and move on, but you've got to stand your ground.
You say make a police report first thing?
If you're a victim of identity theft, the first thing you've got to do is get the facts. What kind of identity theft was it? Was it simply that you gave your card in a restaurant and someone dishonest at the restaurant got your number and you used it to ring up charges? That's the easiest of all kinds of identity theft. You call your credit card company, you deny it's yours, they remove it, you move on, it doesn't affect your credit score, it's not a black mark against you. So you've got to figure out how far did the thieves go with this and what did they do with it. If they took out new credit in your name, or they took out a loan, or they opened up a bank account, the first thing you've got to do is get a police report. Under California law and state law, you're absolutely entitled to a police report. They can't turn you away. So go to your police department, tell them the situation, they will complete a report. With most police departments, you will get a report maybe within 10 days. A lot of times you can do it online, so you don't have to go down. Once you're armed with that police report, typically that's all the debt collectors or the creditors need to accept your word that you're not a victim, and then they will remove it from your credit. They're supposed to remove it from your credit report and stop harassing you. You may need to go a bit further if it's a larger debt or if the company doesn't believe you. There's a thing called an identity theft affidavit. Sounds complicated. It's simply a sworn statement by you. It's like a police report, but you fill in all the details. It was this credit card, it was this number, it was this date, it wasn't me, and you have it notarized. And if you don't want to pay for a notary, at the Identity Theft Council, we'll do it free of charge. And you provide that documentation by mail to whoever's looking for their money. They're supposed to then reverse what they started. Take it off your credit report if it's there, and remove it as a debt in your name.
It's important for everyone to know that we, as the police department here in San Bruno, are a resource to you. If ever in doubt, if ever there's a question about whether you feel that you have been the victim of any crime, but especially identity theft or a scam or something like that, please don't hesitate to pick up the phone and to call us and allow us to at least discuss the issue with you and determine whether or not it can be true or not true. The average person, I think when you receive those phone calls that are suspicious, they're calling us and they're asking, does this sound right? And we're dealing with those people on a semi-regular basis. Please don't be afraid to call us. We are a resource for you. We're absolutely happy to answer the phone, and we're absolutely happy to help you and to try to avoid you becoming the victim of an identity theft. And so if we can help you on the front side, it makes it a whole lot easier for both of us, and it allows us to determine what are the trends. How do we need to warn people in our community? How do we help them as they deal with these different types of things that come along? There are many ways that people can be victimized. Let us help you try to understand whether or not it's accurate or inaccurate, and if it's not, then we certainly want to be able to direct you appropriately so that you can protect yourself and your interests.
One of the few good sides of identity theft, it's the #1 crime in America. It claims more victims every month than all the other crimes put together. Law enforcement know this crime so well. Even in a small city, they can be getting 5 to 10 identity theft complaints in a day. You can get 300 or 400 identity theft complaints in a month. They know that the vast majority of people coming to them are victims. And the credit card companies and the banks and the businesses who are also victims don't want to make you any more of a victim, because they want your business. They want the goodwill. They want you to be saying nice things about them. So if they even suspect that you're a victim, they won't harass you or pursue you. And they know they have legal liabilities that can end up in costly lawsuits if they don't treat you like a victim.
Well, I lost my driver's license one time, and I was very worried. I don't recall if I ever found it, but I replaced it and so on. I think I notified the reporting agencies too, and they put a hold on credit for me. I don't know exactly what that is. Maybe you know about it more.
Thieves can steal your driver's license. A lot of people simply lose them. They leave it in a purse or a wallet, and they leave it behind at maybe a cash register at a store. Thieves don't need to steal your driver's license. They are very good at printing them. We have many, many cases, endless cases of cops going to arrest someone at a hotel and coming in and finding identity theft factories. There was an individual caught in Hayward a while ago, and she had a document factory in the trunk of her car with over 1,000 manufactured identities. So they are able to make credit cards, social security cards, driver's licenses that are so good, even the cops can't tell. So they don't really need to steal your driver's license. But when they do, they can start that process of being you, of pretending to be you. So if you do fall victim, or even suspect you fall victim, there are a number of things you can do to watch your credit, for example. You can place a 90-day fraud alert with the credit reports. It's very easy to do. You simply call one of the 3 bureaus. So they are Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. If you can't remember those names, call us at the council, we'll let you know. You simply call up one of them, or go online if you're comfortable using the internet, and you place what's called a fraud alert. It lasts for 90 days. The one bureau shares it with the other 2. And the idea behind it, it's a little note on your credit report. So if anyone tries to apply for credit in your name, they pull the report, they see the fraud alert, they're supposed to say, wait a minute, we have to double check, there's something wrong here. They don't always do that. So it's not a fail-safe. You can, if you want, go to a more extreme measure of freezing your credit. It essentially permanently locks your credit. So even you can't take out new credit in your name unless you provide the secret PIN number that they gave you when you freeze. It gets a bit complicated.
Who wants to remember that for 10 years?
Exactly. You've got to write it down and you've got to guard it well. But it does...
Tattoo it on your arm.
Absolutely, or on your forehead maybe. You'll certainly, the bank won't want you walking into their branch with that on your forehead. But it's a good protection against one kind of identity theft. It automatically rejects any applications for credit in your name. But it doesn't stop thieves filing taxes in your name, working in your name, applying for benefits. It's not a cure-all. It's an extra step that some people might want to take.
Is there anything else that you can think of?
Remember the Identity Theft Council, identitytheftcouncil.org. All the things we've talked about, the information is on our site. We have a 35-page guide that's free of charge that goes through all these tips. Non-technical, very easy to understand, all in checklists. So do this, don't do this, don't do this. It's part of a campaign that we're running, we just launched in the Bay Area, called 100 Cities in 100 Days. And it's really inviting cities and communities to do at least one thing to raise awareness about these crimes and to educate the community. So we're extremely grateful to the city of San Bruno for participating and doing this one thing to get the information out there. And if you are a victim or you're just worried you might be, you can still contact the council. We'll provide free of charge any advice and support over the phone. It won't cost you a dime. And it's like your local police department. You don't have to wait until you've been a victim to contact us. If you're just worried or there's something going on that you're a bit suspicious of, or you just want good, sound safety advice, contact us. You'll get access to some of the top experts in the country free of charge. It's a great thing for the Bay Area, so use us.
Neil, thank you so much. I appreciate the information. It was fun talking to you.
Thanks for getting the word out.
Well, I'm sure that everybody out at home enjoyed it too.
Great. Well, we hope we didn't scare you too much and we gave you some useful information. And remember, if you don't click, they lose.
Thank you. And thank you for watching. I hope to see you next time on Senior Moments.